Hey, top of the morning, everybody. Welcome to a Sunday edition of The Sweat, 8 to 10 o'clock Eastern Time. We got you covered here on DraftKings Network and VSiN for the next, not 1, but 2 hours. I'm Emerson Lancia, sitting alongside 3 of my best friends, Josh Applebaum, Steve Buchanan, Julian Edlow.
Hey.
Top of the morning to you. We got a hell of a show lined up. We're going to have Nate Taylor, the man who covers the Chiefs for The Athletic, the beat writer, going to join us here coming up in about 30 minutes. Jeff Howe, big national writer for the NFL, will join us around 9:30. We got some basketball picks. We got some golf picks. We got some hockey picks. But we are going to be loaded for a majority of this morning with football, baby, because it's conference championship
Sunday, Emerson.
Who is fired up?
I'm so
man?
glad I don't get punched. I don't mind it.
You
Here.
can punch me all day.
Let's
go.
brother. All right, let's start it off. On the AFC side, first time in his career, Lamar Jackson's playing in the AFC title game here, guys. If he wants to win, he's going to have to do it here, right? Against a guy the AFC title game will probably eventually be named after, and that's Patrick Mahomes here. So we talked a lot about this on yesterday's edition of The Sweat. Steve Buchanan, this is a tough task for both teams. We're talking top defenses here. Which team are you giving the edge to right now, my dude? It's about a 4-point spread on the DK Sportsbook.
Yeah, so during the afternoon yesterday, we saw this game touch up to 4.5 in favor of Baltimore. It has come back down to 4. Be curious to see if that moves as we get closer to kickoff here. But, still feel strong about the Ravens in this point. We talked about this extensively yesterday. The loss of Tooney for the Chiefs, I think, is going to be a bigger deal than maybe people are alluding to so far. And a report came out this morning that if the Chiefs do make the Super Bowl, very good chance he's going to miss that game as well. Wow. So what could that mean if it's against the 49ers or it's against the Lions there? But first we have to get there. But I don't think they're going to get there. I really do think that the Ravens have a big advantage in this game, not just offensively, but defensively as well. And I think that's really going to be the crux for them in this game. If Pacheco is not able to run the ball as efficiently as we've seen him with his injuries and the injuries to the offensive line, if he can't get it to his guy like Rashee Rice, we talked about it, in a really tough matchup in coverage against Kyle Hamilton. He's been one of the best cornerbacks in the league. So what does that mean? He's got to go to MVS or Justin Watson? That's a massive downgrade from what he's been going to if you're not going to Kelsey over the middle of the field here as well. So I'm still going with the Ravens in this spot here. Again, if you're on the fence at this point, we could see some more movement towards the Ravens as this afternoon goes on. But, like I mentioned, it's back down to 4 after touching 4.5 here yesterday.
I mean, Chiefs looking to make their 4th Super Bowl appearance in the last 5 seasons. Josh, Ravens would be punching their ticket to the big game for the first time since 2012. That was when old man Joe Flacco was under center for him right now. Are you with Steve on this one, and are you riding with the home favorites?
So I'm going to go the other way. I'm going Mahomes. I'm going down the ship with Mahomes as a dog here. I mentioned this yesterday, and I think Steve brings up a couple good points.
Thanks.
To me, the most important thing today, guys, is where we close this game. It's sitting at 4.5, 4. It's gone back and forth between different shops. The juice is obviously anytime it's plus 4.5, it's juiced up minus 120 to the Chiefs. Any 4s out there are really juiced up toward the Ravens, minus 4, minus 120. So my thing, and we talked about yesterday on the show in terms of college basketball with a teachable moment, is where the juice goes and where the line closes late game day movement. Because to me, guys, if you see this game close before kickoff at minus 4.5 across the board, what I kind of refer to, my buddy Patrick Maher always says is painted across the board. That means any book you look at is exactly the same. Then 4.5 is a great sign for Baltimore. However, we are starting to see anytime it gets to 4.5, it's juiced back toward Kansas City. So do we get down to 4 across the board before we get to kickoff? That's just one thing that I'll be monitoring all day. Obviously, you get to 4, that's going to be a good sign for KC. Good sign here if it's 4.5 toward Baltimore. But here's where I'm looking at this game in 2 directions, guys. One, I do try to stay as close as I can to the data, and the data does show Baltimore looks pretty good. They're only getting 50% tickets, but 61% of the money. Remember, they were as low as minus 3.5, minus 3, so the movement has gone toward Baltimore. But the elephant in the room, if you're betting on Baltimore, is you're going up against Patrick Mahomes. That's so important. 9-1 ATS as a dog. He was 1.5, getting a 1.5 in the Super Bowl, wins it outright. He was a dog last week against Buffalo, wins it outright. You also look at playoff dogs just in general, 59% against the spread since 2017. You do have the road referee with Sean Smith, 60% ATS, and you do have the experience factor of Reid Mahomes in this game where Lamar's never been in this game. So I think you can make a case for both sides, and I'm not going to argue with you. But also you got to remember, where does this thing close? What ticket are you holding? I think you can get a 4.5 now and get the Chiefs. I'm playing that right now. I think it's a great teaser, guys. 4.5 to 10.5. Go through 7 and 10.
Josh says you can make a case for both sides. Which side would you like
You're
to
the
make a
tiebreaker,
case
Julian.
for? Come on, Jules.
I know, I'm the tiebreaker here, and this is
That's scary.
maybe the hardest game of the playoffs. Like Josh said, this is back-to-back days now. Josh has given his analysis and landed on the Chiefs, but really giving you both sides, why you could bet both sides in it. And I'm not ragging on him for it. It's just
trying to be honest.
Exactly. If you're being honest about this game, there's two ways to look at it. The numbers say Baltimore, both in terms of the stats, what they've done on the field this season, and in terms of the betting splits and seeing the game go out to 4.5 at points in time. And I don't care necessarily as much as Josh does if this game closes 4 or 4.5. I think the move from 3 to 4 throughout the week itself is relatively telling right there. The part that I am having trouble handicapping is the human element of this game, the human aspect of it. Are the Ravens going to tighten up in a huge game at home against a team that's been there, done that? And is Mahomes going to go out there and be, Joe Cool like Tom Brady? Been here, we're here every year, we're here to take care of business. That's the only part that I have trouble with in this game. If the Ravens were to puke on themselves in a tight game and be like, we could have predicted that, we could have seen that coming. But numbers-wise, there's a good chance Baltimore gets out to a lead and just has to maintain it, because that's what they've done all season. 9 wins over teams that finished the season 500 or better by 14 or more points, including Christmas night against the 49ers. So as we get closer to kick, I'm talking myself more into Baltimore in this game. I get the Mahomes underdog factor, and he went on the road and proved it last week. But maybe this schedule in the postseason just shaped up a little bit easier than we're giving it credit for Kansas City, and now is when they're going to hit the huge roadblock in Baltimore.
I don't know. It kind of feels like there for a second you were taking a trip down Narrative Avenue.
I mean, is Mahomes playing in the AFC Championship
or
game,
Street Road. Or Street Road.
By the way, total in this game, we talked about it yesterday, Josh. Yep. That got hit hard overnight or this morning, whenever. That's 23% of the bets. We talked about the under.
Yeah.
23% of the bets for 57% of the money now on the under, whereas it was way less handle when we spoke about it on Saturday.
I think that's the right side.
Okay. Yeah.
I do think the under is very much in play in this game here, because we talked about the defenses in this game, like Baltimore holding opponents to 16 points per game. Kansas City, right in the same realm there, just over 17 points per game. Like, I find it hard to think that we're going to get offensive outbursts from either side here. Like, the Ravens, like I mentioned, I think have the much better offense here. I don't think really anyone's going to deny that here. But just how many bad individual matchups that are negative for the Chiefs in this matchup against the Ravens is like, okay, even if the Ravens post, let's say 21, 24 points, like how much realistically are we going to get from the Chiefs if he can't get the ball to Rice? If Pacheco is not as effective with the injuries to the offensive line and him himself, like is it going to be all on Kelsey at that point? So I'm really struggling with where the points are going to come from for the Chiefs. So I'm with them. I do like the under a lot here at 44.5.
I mean, it's a good point, Steve, because I feel like the key to this game, Josh, could almost be which defense is going to blink first here. We know that the Ravens are this perennial defensive power, including this historic first place ranking this season. Kansas City's run to the last 6 AFC title games here has been fueled by its offense until this year.
Yeah, it's a great point here. And I think just in terms of maybe the underdog angle with Mahomes, obviously you get the stat 9-1 ATS, but the position they're in, I mean, if you go to these AFC Championship games, usually they're the favorite, laying points, and they're the popular bet. To me, why I'm kind of maybe overriding or maybe overlooking too much Baltimore, like if Baltimore covers and wins, I'll say, hey, an idiot. What was I doing? 50% bet, 60% money line went to Baltimore. Boom, take Baltimore here. But the human element that Julian talked about in this spot with the pressure off them, that's part of it. But in terms of the total, I'm with the guys here. Under 44.5. It's really juiced up under. I think if you like the under, you want to get it now. If this is a 24-20 game, the hook could make or break your bet. It's juiced up, so grab it if you like it. And Julian mentioned it, a huge change. And this is what I think is so important with betting splits. You got to really lean on them more closer to game time, because more bets come in. The public has their say later in the week. As Julian mentioned, this looked like kind of like a Pro and Joe maybe over at one point. It's completely flipped. 23% bets, 57% money to the under. Weather is going to be a huge factor, but it could be a little rainy. Could have 10-mile-per-hour winds. Two good defenses here. I'm going to go under 44.5.
And again, Nate Taylor, sorry to cut you off there, Jules. No, it's all good. Chiefs beat writer for The Athletic here. He's going to be in Baltimore. So he'll give us an update himself
An unfiltered
in the city of
look at
crab
the weather.
cakes, which sometimes you sweat and you smell like crab cakes, Jules. He will let us know firsthand what the weather looks like.
Haven't had any crab cakes in a while. It's actually a travesty. We have 1 minute left in the block, Josh. I have a quick question for you. When you're saying usually Mahomes is the popular bet, but now you can get him as a contrarian dog, ticket count's 50-50 on DK. It
has evened out, yeah.
People are there. Is it at is Mahomes contrarian, or is this game just people are betting both sides and there's a little bit more pro money, 60% of the handle on Baltimore?
So by definition, 50-50 is split. So neither side is contrarian, basically. But I guess the narrative here, and the public would say normally it's Mahomes all day, but they see the Ravens having a great year at home, laying a short number. To me, 50-50 theoretically is split, but it almost feels a bit contrarian just because Mahomes is getting, again, typically 70-80%.
A lot of people are going to wake up and bet small amounts on this game between now and kick. The game day bettors, the casual bettors. We'll see where that bet count goes.
All right, gentlemen, let's take a quick break, shall we? Let's poke over to the hardwood real quick. We got Kevin Durant, the Suns, in action tonight, where he lands on Josh and Julian's betting card coming up. All right, everybody, welcome back here on The Sweat. So we've got only, a 5-game slate around the NBA today, but you guys are still going to be able to put together some really rock-solid bets for us. Before we do that, let's look back to what went down yesterday. And you could not miss it if you were floating around in the cesspool known as Twitter, that Joel, X, thank you very much. Joel Embiid, 4th time the 76ers have visited Denver. 4th straight time that he has decided not to play said basketball game when the 76ers
Getting a little weird.
What is he doing? Why is he avoiding clashing with the next best big man in the NBA in the Mile High? Is that what happens when you're out of shape? What's going on? Seriously, what's happening here?
I don't know. Dude doesn't want to play in Denver. It seems clear. It's a matchup we would want to see. We just saw it in Philly.
It sucks for
Philly
the fans,
just won
too.
it. You would want to see what Denver can do at home on the other side of it. Yeah, it more stinks as a fan. As a Denver minus 4.5 better, I was thrilled. Closed 13.5, got 9 points of CLV, and barely covered it. Probably should have come back and played the other side. Would have been a nice middle. I don't know why, but what I do know, put it this way, Embiid can only miss 6 more games and still be eligible for MVP. I haven't even checked the MVP odds. I don't know if it swung anything because Jokic didn't do anything.
Jokic had the triple-double. So
Embiid's
Joel's
still
still
the
plus, plus 200, and
Yeah.
now Jokic is right behind him at plus 210.
Right, so kind of like we talked about yesterday on the show, if Denver won this game and Jokic played well, this would be closer to even, and it is. Difference is Embiid just didn't play. What was he, plus 140 yesterday? So he loses, that's a pretty big move for missing one regular season game. I don't know if Philly's gonna let him miss 6 more games if it's up to them.
Yeah.
But again, they're showing willingness to rest him. Let's say he rests 2 more times before the All-Star break or something. All it's gonna take is a little ankle roll, and then it's 4 games. That's a week of games, and you're not eligible. So I maintain what I said last week on the show. Embiid is, for MVP is one of the worst bets you can make right now.
And let's remind people too, he was just a last-second scratch here. And so
it was really weird.
Yeah, you have Nuggets coach Michael Malone expects the NBA to investigate the 76ers, Josh, after Joel Embiid was made a no play here in the final seconds.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of takeaways from this game. Like, one, I always go to the betting line first. I think this speaks to not betting a bad number after it's moved too much, because Julian mentioned he got a great bet there on the Denver Nuggets laying a short number. They opened like minus 4.5. They closed minus 13?
13 and a
So
half, yeah.
You see this all the time, Julian and Emerson. a guy will be ruled out, and then everyone will just automatically bet against that team. So if you were to lay a bad number, obviously with Denver, they win the game, but they don't cover the number. So cautionary tale there, not to just jump on an injury and bet the other way just for the sake of doing it. Also, though, you look at the MVP. I'm with Julian here. I think the play is Jokic. He's plus 210. I know SGA and Luka Doncic are right behind him. But, with Embiid sitting out, he's already won his award, so he doesn't really have to win the MVP again. He's already proven that he's a great player. He dropped 70 the other day. And again, this is a team that I think is focusing on the playoffs. Even though you get rid of Harden, you're a better team just in general. So they're really going to just, risk it, play maybe when you're iffy, and maybe risk an even bigger injury just to win a game or just to get the MVP. I don't think so. To me, Embiid has his sights set higher to win in the postseason, which is why I don't think he'll make that 65-game limit to win the award. And then I'll just throw this one at you guys. We talked about the Lakers and the Warriors, one of the most exciting games yesterday. Lakers win the game by 1. You did see a move back to the Lakers. They were plus 2 down to 1.5. We talked about the over there, and I think oftentimes a lot of bettors will get scared off just if a total is so high. Remember, on the show we talked about it open at 238.5. I think it closed like 240.5. You get worried because it's so high, but again, the odds makers were telling you that it kept getting steamed up. There was no buyback, and there was a great bet split to the over. Both good offenses, both teams are rested. So cautionary tale, or just kind of a word of advice, don't be scared off by a number. If it's high, doesn't mean it has to go under. If it's low, doesn't mean it has to go over. But in that situation, you would love to hold an over ticket. Didn't have to sweat that thing at all.
Also,
double overtime also helps with overs.
Of course.
Let's mention that.
Yeah, that was an excellent game between the Lakers and the Warriors. LeBron hitting the clutch free throws like at the end. There was Anthony Davis at one point looking seriously hurt, and then he pulled a Willis Reed by returning to the court and helping get his team to overtime. And then Jules' Celtics just getting absolutely smoked home by the Clippers. What the hell happened there?
I thought it was setting up as a good Celtics spot, more so a bad Clippers spot with Kawhi going back to Toronto the night before. But Clippers coming to Boston, play everybody on the second night of a back-to-back. Celtics feeling good about themselves after a huge win in Miami. Weird road trip, 2 games in Texas back-to-back. Go to Miami, come home. Generally, those first games home, you don't want to back a team. And we kind of saw that in Denver as well, with Denver having all their guys and just barely getting by the Sixers with none of their guys. So I guess I'll use it as a teaching lesson to point to that. Those first games home after a long road trip, you want to be careful with your team because the Clippers just came in and rolled in what looked like it was setting up to be a Celtics spot.
All right, in terms of what we have today, again, a handful of games on the slate. It's hard for me to ignore the Suns visiting the Magic because of this tear that Devin Booker has been on, guys, in the month of January. 62 points the other night, 46. You have 52 points in 3 of his last 5 games here. The Suns have only lost once since, I believe, January 12th. 7-1 straight up. The only game they lost to was the other night against the Pacers when Booker scored the 62 points here. Is that on your betting card today at all, Jules, this game?
I don't.
Or is anything of interest to you in this?
Yeah,
maybe overs here with Booker's points.
I don't love much in the NBA right now in terms of this betting card. I would lean to Phoenix. They're playing really well right now, and they're coming off that loss, that tough loss at Indy. They're taking 86% of the bets for 74% of the money, but the money line is a little sharper, 79% of the bets for 90% of the handle. I would lean to Phoenix. They're just playing better right now. Orlando got off to a hot start to the season. They're leveling off a bit. It's in the middle of an East Coast trip for the Suns, so you never know when you're going to get a down spot, but I think that was a pretty deflating end to that Indy game, and you see the Suns there minus 125 on the money line. That would be my look in this game. That would be one of probably my favorite side if I were to take any side on this NBA card. Obviously, with everybody's focus on football.
Yeah, Josh, what about you here? Because also you look at the history between these two teams. Talking Suns and Magic. I mean, the Suns have won 4 of their last 5 meetings against the Magic here, and then Booker. 4-1, Booker and the Suns 4-1 straight up for their 5 last road games, or the last 5 road games.
Yeah, from a player prop perspective, Emerson, Devin Booker, points, rebounds, assists, 42.5 over minus 125. So it tells us, again, liability here on him to have another big game. Now, I can't get there on the Suns. Seems like an easy bet. But again, it's a little fishy. Why are they only -2 on the road at Orlando? Shouldn't that be a much higher number? Almost 90% of bets are going with the Suns, yet they open -1.5, 2. They really haven't moved off of 2. That just smells fishy to me. It feels like they're going to roll in this one, but these are the kind of bets to me. That's a red flag when you're so popular and yet the line's so short and seems too good to be true. I'll be honest, guys, I kind of like the under here. I know it's crazy with Booker and the great offense of the Phoenix Suns, but it opened at 229. It's down to 228 or 227.5, and you're getting currently over 74% of bets on the over, yet the total fell. So to me, that's kind of a, it feels gross and it's not fun to sweat an under, but it tells me there's some under money there. You do look at the Magic, they're 24-20 to the under. To me, this is more about the Magic in terms of a slower pace. Both teams are actually bottom 12 in pace, but Orlando is 5th in defensive efficiency. So they want to play a slower, game here with less offense and more defense. So again, feels easy with the Suns, but I can't get there. It's too popular and the line hasn't moved.
Not that I have a play on either of these, but I'll just say using the betting splits, some totals that have taken big money so far on DK Sportsbook. Pacers Grizzlies under is 44% of the bets for 91% of the handle. Raptors Hawks over 55% of the bets for 96% of the handle. So those are 2 totals that have gotten hit pretty hard so far.
What about what interests you today in college hoops here? Because you've got the top 2 teams that are in action. So the Huskies, UConn will host Xavier, and then you got Purdue on the road at Rutgers here. A couple of our top 25 teams in action. Number 19, Memphis. Number 22, Florida Atlantic. And then you've got New Mexico, 25th ranked team in the country.
It's a weird college basketball slate because we have the top 2 teams in the country playing, but not really any good games. They're both double-digit favorites. I don't really have anything in those 2 games. North Texas is shaping up to be a sharp bet according to the splits. 34% of the bets, 54% of the handle on North Texas, getting double digits at FAU. FAU slipped up at times this season, but North Texas is coming off a pretty big game on, was it Friday or Thursday night? So I might want to avoid the letdown spot there, but I did that yesterday with Josh's play on Northwestern, and Northwestern came through. So not always an end-all, be-all. And what was the other one? Memphis is on the road at UAB.
UAB is kind of intriguing to me there.
UAB +4 is intriguing. I don't love the team with the eye test. Can
Feels
I
like
ignore
Arizona,
that or
Oregon
not?
once again,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
I'm close on a couple in college hoops, but might just ultimately be staying away.
Josh, anything you'd like to add to that here?
The only thing I would mention, low bet obscure line move, Marist, Canisius. This is a real degenerate special here.
Everyone's talking
Damn,
about that
big
game.
man.
Yeah, Canisius
Deep
was minus
down
3.5. It's down to 3. I would hold my nose and just sweat Marist. 1 o'clock plus 3.5. You can find it.
All right, dudes. Good stuff there. We're going to poke back over
Not gonna do that.
We're going to poke back over to the AFC title game here, which may or may not mark the end of an era after it. We'll go live to Baltimore, where Chiefs beat writer Nate Taylor standing by after the break. So first time, Jules, this AFC Championship game is not taking place in Kansas City since 2018. So there's some chatter too, like about the weather and will it impact the way that teams scheme and stuff like that. I want to know right now, just how difficult, from your point of view, has this game been to handicap?
2018 AFC Championship, by the way, in Foxborough, so almost and then the Patriots played in Kansas City the next year, almost a passing of the torch, and now it's just in Kansas City every year. Great game, by the way, that Miles Jack fumble, whatever it was.
Yeah, Miles Jack was not down in that game. I'm telling you right now, okay, as a Duval faithful, we don't need to go there. You know where we need to go, Jules?
Where?
Is Baltimore right now, because Nate Taylor, the Chiefs beat reporter for the
I
Athletic.
You up with that, though.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Now
problem.
my blood pressure is on the rise.
Perfect.
Top of the morning, Nate. What's up, dude?
Hey, how you doing, fellas?
Doing great, man. We're doing great. How is the weather there? Everyone's starting to panic about it a little bit. It's going to be a little bit of rain. You look outside the window there. How does it look?
It looks like a pretty nice January, to be honest with you, fellas, especially this late in the month. So there might be some rain, but I don't think it'll impact the game a ton.
Okay.
At least based on the forecast early today. I mean, for the Chiefs specifically, this will be balmy, man. I mean, they went from the fourth coldest game in the NFL against the Miami Dolphins on the wild card round. And of course, it was in the low 20s midway through the game against the Buffalo Bills. So today being in the in the high low 40s, high 30s with a little bit of rain, the Chiefs will be thrilled with such a weather conditions compared to their first two matchups.
Yeah, and last week had to feel good for this team. First true road playoff game, Mahomes passing the test. Where is this confidence level at for this team? Because they've been so much more efficient actually on the road this season. They're 8-2, counting the playoffs here, Nate.
Right, and I think something that gets lost in all of this is that Mahomes really does enjoy having the opportunity to go somewhere and sort of show his brilliance outside of Arrowhead Stadium. And then I think one thing that you have to consider too is, the Chiefs have a formula that can travel, right? They have Isaiah Pacheco, one of the more difficult running backs to tackle, and they have, the second best defense in terms of the league when it comes to, points per game. So I know they're facing the number one defense today in the Baltimore Ravens, but if you have a stellar quarterback, a solid defense that, has been productive all season long, and you can run the football, then yeah, you can win in most settings, whether it's in Arrowhead Stadium or in this case today at, M&T Bank Stadium here in Baltimore.
Nate, I want to get your take on the mentality of these two teams, because handicapping this game, if you go through the numbers on paper, it points to Baltimore. They've been the better team this year, and there's a lot of reasons to like them, but you handicap kind of the human element of this game. They're hosting an AFC Championship game. It's the biggest game being played in the city of Baltimore in however many years. What is Lamar Jackson? What is this team going to look like in that moment? Are they going to tighten up? And on the other side, Mahomes is just another day of business, Brady-like. You just snap your fingers, show up in the AFC Championship game, and take care of business. I'm curious what you think about the mentality of these two teams, because I think that's the hardest part for me to kind of handicap where this game is going to go.
Yeah, there's going to be plenty of emotions, fellas. And I do think that this game is hard to sort of predict just because, both teams have exceptional defenses. They have probably the two most talented quarterbacks in the league in terms of just what they can do with both their legs and their arms in terms of decision-making within the pocket and without being in the pocket. And I think the other thing to consider too, guys, is it's going to be so difficult because the emotions of this game is going to be so high, particularly in the first quarter for Baltimore. And I'm so fascinated to see how do the Ravens sort of react to, this being the first AFC Championship game in M&T Stadium, but also in Baltimore in general since 1971, where they were the Baltimore Colts. So, every legend's going to be out here. T-Pain's doing halftime.
Yeah.
Just do the Ravens live with the emotion? Do they harness it correctly in the first, couple minutes? Because on the other side, the Chiefs have been here before, fellas. I mean, this is 6 straight in a row. Obviously, they've proven that they can win, a elimination game on the road before getting to this point. So, the big thing is, do the Ravens sort of live on harnessing this emotion, getting out to maybe a quick lead, and then sort of squeezing the Chiefs, in terms of the game script and just what they can ultimately do. Because I think the biggest worry for any fan that's not a Kansas City Chiefs fan is what happens if Mahomes gets the ball and he has a chance to lead the Chiefs down to victory, whether that's a game-winning field goal or obviously a game-winning touchdown. What you don't want if you're Baltimore is to have this team all of a sudden, that champion that is not willing to give up their crown just yet, have a chance to win in the fourth quarter. So if the Chiefs can withstand that early emotion, withstand the Ravens being able to maybe get a lead in the first half and sort of slowly come back, I think this has all the makings for one of the more instant sort of classic AFC Championship games that we could potentially see. That reminds me very much of the Tom Brady, Peyton Manning era between the Colts, obviously, and the New England Patriots.
Yeah, that Tom Brady, Blake Bortles era back in 2018. Yeah,
that was pretty quick.
For sure.
Quick era.
Yeah, very, very quick. Just one and done there. But like Nate, I'm also like, you make great points, and then I'm thinking about left guard Joe Thuney being out, and no one's played more snaps on the Kansas City Chiefs this year than this guy. Like, how could this offense change without him in there? Because we have one of our analysts, Steve, here in studio, who's like, man, I'm targeting now more Patrick Mahomes rushing props, thinking he may be on the move a little more. So how could the offense change?
No, that's a great point, and I tend to agree just because Joe Thuney is an all-pro left guard. He's arguably the best left guard in the league. I like to describe him as a robot because he doesn't say a lot in the media, but he's so technically sound in his technique. It's like he was built in a lab to be a perfect pass protector from that position. The Chiefs do have a quality backup in Nick Allegretti. He actually played and started postseason games before the Chiefs signed Joe Thuney a couple years ago. So he's serviceable. He knows the system. This is year 5 for Nick Allegretti, so there's some comfort in that for Patrick Mahomes. But in terms of his legs, I do think there's a legitimacy to him scrambling more, to extend plays because, again, Baltimore has a great secondary led by Kyle Hamilton. And if you look in these first 2 postseason games, the Chiefs are 4 of 10 in the red zone. And Mahomes has not really chosen to use his legs to try to get in the end zone a ton on those possessions. So if they cannot run the ball successfully with Pacheco, they're going to need him to extend plays, get into creation mode, try to find any solution against a very good Baltimore Ravens defense. And without Joe Thuney, there could be more pressure. There could be more simulated pressures from the Baltimore Ravens, a little bit more blitzing just because you don't have that sort of stabilizing presence in the offensive line. So it's a fascinating element to this game, but I do think you look at Patrick Mahomes and you kind of tell him before kickoff, hey, if it's not there within the first 2 to 3 seconds, don't be afraid to use your legs because that could be the equalizing or the over-the-top element that has the Chiefs able to score more touchdowns in the red zone because this team does not have a lot of explosive players, and they are really struggling at producing explosive plays. So they have to be methodical going down the field and then obviously, capitalizing when they are in the red zone.
You're leading into what I want to ask you about next, Nate, and it's, the Chiefs, it's a tougher matchup against the Baltimore secondary, so they might have a tougher time passing the ball. The pass catchers are not as good as they've been in years past. Matchup-wise, if there's one way that you can get to Baltimore, it's their league average rush defense. And if you look at it in terms of yards per carry, they're actually in the bottom third of the league. It's just teams don't run on them late because they're trailing. You got to throw the ball. So numbers-wise, this team can be had on the ground. If you are Kansas City, is that how you're looking to attack this early? Because initially I was like, well, you're going to run the ball early, see where that goes, and then maybe Mahomes can win it for you late. Now with Thuney out, now with Pacheco, who's like a battering ram, dinged up, is that going to work well enough early? What do you think of this Kansas City run game? Is it going to have enough pieces to get after Baltimore early in this game and kind of set the tone?
I think it's a fair strategy to use. I understand that you still have the most talented quarterback in the league. But for Andy Reid, and this is one of the questions that always comes up around this time, fellas, is will he abandon the run? And I think for him and Matt Nagy, the offensive coordinator, they do not need to abandon the run. They need to use Pacheco as much as possible. You can sprinkle in some Clyde Edwards-Helaire snaps because he's been really good over these last 2 games. And I think where you need Andy Reid to sort of excel in sort of play calling is the creativity, right? You can use jet sweeps. You can use end arounds, misdirection type of plays. And, of course, he's one of the best designers of screenplays in general, right? So you sort of present one thing to the defense and then try to go behind them with a screen pass or two, whether that's Travis Kelce or Isaiah Pacheco. So I think as much as we all love watching Mahomes throw the ball downfield, and we know how exceptional he is at that, they're going to have to be balanced. They're going to have to, blend a lot of certain concepts together so that Baltimore doesn't have the advantage when he does know that you're in passing downs, when they do know that you have to sort of come from behind and you have to you have to go from drop back to traditional drop back. So I do think they should run the ball quite a bit in the first half, and to your point, kind of see how the game evolves. But ultimately, they need Andy Reid to be at his best just as much as people are expecting Patrick Mahomes to sort of prove yet again that he is the league's best quarterback.
All right, Nate, we're out of time. We know you've been busy this week. Thanks for hanging with us, man. We're going to dive more into the odds and props of the AFC Championship game, plus NFC side after this. All right, so by now you know, or maybe you don't, the NFL playoffs been whittled down to 4 teams. It is Conference Championship Sunday, and we've got more Conference Championship Sunday best bets to dish out right now with 2 of my faves, friends of the program, Jeff Ulrich, Pierce Dietrich. Top of the morning to both of you. Jeff Ulrich, not sure if you were just listening to some of Julian Edlow's incredible analysis, but he says over the last 24 hours, the under for this Chiefs-Baltimore game, and what could be a little moist there in Baltimore, has been hit pretty hard, the under. So where would you go on this, looking at this total right now?
Look, it's pretty interesting. I think where the money's going in general. I think a lot of Ravens money has come in as well. Not shocked that the under is getting hit. Kansas City was one of the most extreme under teams in the league, and I would lean towards the under even at 44.5. I'd probably play this down to 44 straight. I think you just look at this game. If the Ravens get ahead, they've got the run game to potentially burn a lot of clock. You've got the Chiefs, like I said, ran the ball well last week, have trended towards being an under team and have a really solid secondary that doesn't allow big plays. I know the Chiefs game went over last week, but that was Josh Allen creating a lot of explosive plays. Could happen again, but I definitely lean under at 44.5.
All right, Pierce Dietrich, I know you're typically Mr. Contrarian. Thinking potentially over here, big man?
No, I'm going to follow the late money, and I'll follow Jeff. It looks like an under to me as well. I'm going to avoid a lot of the advanced metrics. I'll let other people break down all the individual matchups, and think you just need to trust your eyes and your gut. I'm not particularly impressed with either of these offenses. They're good. They're very conservative. I much more like the defenses in this situation, and if they can simply hold back these quarterbacks, which I think these defenses are capable of doing, and limiting the big plays, as Jeff mentioned, then we're going to get ourselves into, a slow field goal battle, and that seems like it's going to be an under to me.
Okay, so then in terms of props, when you're feeling the under, you really like these defenses. Is it more of like the rushing part of the game that you would target on the DK Sportsbook, Pierce?
Well, I'm actually going to go with the passing, but from a negative perspective, here on the show that I love to play the Mahomes interception prop every time. If he throws an interception, it's minus 130. He has a tendency to do that, and he's facing a very good defense. He's an underdog, so he's probably going to be forced to pass more. And one of the problems with the Chiefs is the receivers don't get a lot of separation. That creates tight windows. That's why he's scrambling often. And then, the Ravens are going to make these passing windows even tighter. They picked off opposing teams 18 times this year. That's the 3rd most in the NFL. And on top of that, Mahomes hasn't thrown a pick in 3 straight games. He is very due for a guy that tends to throw a lot of picks. Seems like a pretty safe bet for me.
Okay, Jeff Ulrich, what seems like a pretty safe bet for you in the props department?
Got a couple props I like here. Look, if it's a segment with Pierce and I, so let's mention a random tight end too. Noah Gray over 10.5 receiving yards. I think Noah Gray is really interesting. The Chiefs use more 12 and 13-man formations against the Bills. Noah Gray saw 60% of the snaps. That was his highest snap count since week 5. He's a pretty good receiver as well. I think that going over on his receiving yardage here isn't a bad idea. He's been over this mark in 7 of his last 12 games. You want something crazy too. Noah Gray in the anytime touchdown market, he's only scored twice this year, but plus 800. I think that's actually worth a shot in this spot. And then the other prop I like, Justice Hill over his receiving yards. It's moved up a little bit, but 14.5, I would still play the over. Justice Hill, really good receiving back, and the Bills running backs had a lot of success last week as well.
And then, Jeff, what side of this spread do you fall on here? Because one of the narratives that's been pushed all week is like Patrick Mahomes here when he's an underdog in his career, 9-1-1 against the spread. That includes last week against Buffalo.
Yeah, I was surprised that this spread touched 4.5 at some places, and at DraftKings it's still at 4. I'm a little shocked it even got to 4. I'll take the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes has 3 losses in the playoffs in his career. One of those is by more than a touchdown. Only 2 of them have been by more than 3 points. This just feels like too many points to give Patrick Mahomes. I really like what the Chiefs did on offense last week. Going toe to toe with Buffalo, who was scoring points kind of at a pretty good pace themselves last week. It's pretty impressive. I get that Baltimore's coming in, it's just been the favorite, but I think when you look at the AFC market all year, Baltimore has just been kind of priced as the top team all season. Kansas City has been dragged down. It just feels like there's a little bit of value lurking with the Chiefs at +4. I think you could just make an argument betting Mahomes blindly at +4 points, who's 5-0 ATS for his career when he goes off as an underdog of 3 points or more. It's usually a pretty good idea.
I mean, Pierce, on the flip side, you got the Ravens 6-0 ATS, 6-0 straight up when favored by 4 points or less this season.
I'm going to go a step further than Jeff and give me the Chiefs and the money line, not just to cover the spread, but to win this game. The simulation that we live in demands that Taylor Swift is at the Super Bowl. What are we going to do if we don't have 2 weeks of novelty prop bets around Taylor Swift to talk about? So that's going to happen. I know that all the metrics and all the matchups really lean towards the Ravens. Every box is checked for them, but that's just not the way that it works. It comes down to the players, the plays, the execution, and it really doesn't matter what the stat sheet says. It sounds awfully familiar, like a team that we used to see constantly go to the Super Bowl, the New England Patriots. And the Chiefs are kind of the new version of that dynasty. They just win games, even when the matchup doesn't look that great for them. Give me the Chiefs and the money line.
Pierce, we know that there's nothing more that you would love than a Taylor Swift and Eminem Super Bowl and hoping the Lions upset San Francisco, because the Lions, in your eyes, one of the greatest running jokes, probably the longest running joke in the Sweats' 6-year history now. The Lions basically a 500 team here. And this dates back to years ago when the Lions had like 2 wins, and you're like, yeah, they're basically a 500 football team.
They're the Super Bowl, basically. They're 1 win away from the Super Bowl that year, I think.
So insane. So this is not the time, Pierce, to hop off the Lions bandwagon, baby. How are we feeling? Can they go in and upset the juggernaut 49ers today?
Yeah, they absolutely can. I'm not going to hop off the bandwagon.
Yeah, there he is.
Of this trend. You know I love the Lions.
All right, so you like them straight up today, don't you?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to take them on the money line, right? They were basically a 500 team. The reason why I gave that take was because they were covering spreads. And not only were they covering spreads, they just play well for Campbell. And, why not root for the underdog? Why not root for this team that, America's fallen in love with? I know the public likes the spread, and spread's the way to go. But I'm going to take them straight up. I know it's bizarre and it's off the wall, but sometimes you got to follow your heart. And, the Lions, that's the team.
Look at Jeff. Look at that smile on your face. Jeff, are you following your heart or your brain?
No, I'm not following my heart. If I followed my heart every time when I bet, I'd be absolutely living on the street.
Yeah, you'd be betting Tommy Fleetwood every week.
San Francisco is going to clean Detroit's clock this week, in my opinion. And look, we can come back on the show. This will be great entertainment. If Detroit ends up going with the upset, Pierce could absolutely make fun of me for an entire segment. But I think San Francisco wins this game, and I think they potentially win it going away. The Detroit defense is just I do not know how they have gotten to this point. Maybe it is just sheer will from Dan Campbell, but my God, they give up so many explosive plays. Now they're playing Kittle, Debo, Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey. They're playing the Monstars from the Michael Jordan movie.
Yeah.
This is going to be a destruction, in my opinion. I think San Francisco at home is just going to be too much. I think the Cinderella story ends here. The carriage turns back into a pumpkin, and San Francisco covers and potentially even covers big. I'd look at alternate spreads here. San Francisco -9.5 and San Francisco 13.5.
You mean Space Jam, dude? The LeBron movie?
Space Jam, thank you. I can't remember all these.
No worries. Who do you got? Who do you have in props? Who do you like in props for this game? I know there's been a lot of talk about the tight end position here, Jeff.
Yeah, and let's stick with it. I mean, George Kittle over 60.5 yards. This number actually moved down a little bit with Deebo Samuel being active, but I'm not sure if Deebo's going to necessarily play as many snaps as he usually does. He may, but even if he does, I mean, it's still just a fantastic matchup for George Kittle. Detroit allowing a ton of big plays to Kate Otten last week, 65 yards and a touchdown, like I mentioned. I mean, Kittle is just a guy who just doesn't seem to get enough appreciation. He's gone over this number more times than not this year. I think in a big game, again, it should get a little bit more primary targeting here. George Kittle after the catch, bullying some of these smaller corners on Detroit. Yeah, I think a George Kittle over is very nice. If you want an under, Jameson Williams, I'll just keep playing the under on him. I think it's kind of a tough spot for Jared Goff. I don't think he's going to have a ton of time to look downfield.
All right, Pierce, what about you?
Christian McCaffrey over 36.5 receiving yards. It seems suspiciously low given the situation. And I know McCaffrey hasn't really piled up the receiving yards this season, but Debo's not 100%. This is the biggest game of CMC's career. We know that Brock Purdy has struggled recently, so you'd think that they would probably just lean on some of the easier passes, feed the ball to McCaffrey. He should get the volume. He's got the big play potential. Again, I know the stats haven't really lined up, but this is just a different scenario where you're really going to want to just feed him the ball all game long.
Yeah, only minus 330 as an anytime touchdown scorer in the DraftKings Sportsbook. Pierce, we wish you well. Enjoy watching this game. I'm sure on the edge of your seat. Jeff, hang out. We'll talk some golf and hockey with you coming up. But next, we'll bring back Jules, Steve, and Josh to dive into the NFC Championship game. Former number 1 overall pick against Mr. Irrelevant, who is now very relevant.
kind of relieved because I know it wasn't a fracture. It was just like a deep bruise or whatever. But I'm talking about countless hours in here day in and day out just to get where we at right now. And it was kind of painful at the time, but as the week on, like I just said, them doing a good job getting all the pain away, getting all my motion and strength back, and I feel like they did an outstanding job.
How do you play as physically as you do, but still trying to protect yourself?
I ain't protecting nothing.
And you could easily make an argument here, guys, that Deebo Samuel could be the most impactful player in this game. I know he's got the banged up shoulder. Everyone's banged up this time of year. Was a full participant, I believe, like at Friday's practice. But maybe it's safe to say, you tell me, Steve, is it safe to say that Samuel won't be able to contribute the way he normally does? We've already seen the impact of when it was announced, as we just mentioned with Jeff, on some of the props, like Kittle's number went down a little bit once Deebo was announced that he was going to play here. But is it safe to say he won't be able to contribute the same way he normally does?
I mean, ideally, I would think that that's true. But, like, he seems like one of those guys, and you just saw from the comments there, that, like, it doesn't matter. Like the center for the Lions, Ragnow, I think his name is. He's got like
ankle, knee, back.
Right, like literally has like 4 different injuries. Like
Frank's a tough guy.
He looked like he was like decapitated at one point during that game, and he runs off for a play and he comes back. He's like, I'm good. Like some of these guys are just built different. I feel like that's kind of one of the guys that Deebo is one of those type of guys. So, I mean, realistically too, you also have to take into consideration, and I don't think this is going to happen, but like. If the 49ers get out to an enormous lead, do they protect Samuel? And I feel like that would make a lot of sense.
1,000%.
You know what I mean? So I don't think that's going to happen. But then again, 49ers are over a touchdown favorite at this point.
I mean, would you just stay away from him, Jules, in terms of like props or that kind of? I don't even know if he's
not
on the. Well, let's see. I mean, like anytime touchdown scores,
I mean, he's up there, and people are betting his receiving over. It's 47.5 yards, juiced minus 135 to the over. And Deebo generally has a rushing prop as well.
Yeah, I don't see that on here right now.
Not posted. All right, so I don't mind going to him. It's a modest spot. It's a modest number. People are going to look past him because of the injury designation. It's the biggest game of the year, and he's your most dynamic ball carrier, Christian McCaffrey included. So, I think it's a great game to get him the ball, to be honest. I would look to the over on his prop, getting a good number on a guy that, maybe people are looking away from.
Or would you almost think, Josh, that, let's say he is banged up, and again, a lot of dudes are banged up, that maybe does this put more on the plate of playmakers like a Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk?
I think so, and I think, Deebo, the stat we gave yesterday, it still holds true today. When he plays, he starts the game and finishes the entire game. They're 12-1 straight up. They're 10-3 against the spread. If he gets hurt, misses the game, or leaves the game, they're 1-4 straight up. They're 0-5 against the spread. So to me, one of the guys you can really target here would be George Kittle over 58.5 receiving yards. Now, it was as high as 60.5 yesterday, so it scares you a little bit that it came down a little bit, but now you can get a better number, and the reason for that is Kittle as the go-to guy. When you see Deebo banged up, where does Purdy go to? Kittle is the guy over the middle, the big play opportunity. He had 4 catches for 81 yards against Green Bay in the first game. And also Detroit, they just got lit up by Cade Otton last week. Cade Otton had 5 catches for 65 yards. Detroit, by the way, 31st in passing yards allowed per game for 257. So again, Deebo's banged up. He's going to play, but will he re-aggravate something? Will he leave the game? I think it's something you got to look at if you're live betting. And to me, Kittle's the guy to target now over 58.5, buy low, minus 120.
And the other thing is, too, is that I think it's worth looking at someone like Jawan Jennings, because it's very obvious from what we saw in that game when Deebo was hurt last time out that Jennings is the direct backup for Deebo Samuel. Now, you look at his receiving prop sitting at 17.5, juiced up to minus 120 for the over here. Like, I think that's something worth looking at too as well, because while he's not going to get those consistent targets, when he is going to get targeted, he is going to get some of those deeper downfield shots, and he's been able to clear this in some really short instances too. Like, you look at week 15 against Arizona, only 2 catches, but for 25 yards. Week 13 against the Eagles. Bad secondary, just like we're going to see here with the Lions. 3 catches, but only 3 catches, but for 44 yards. So, like, he is one of those guys, almost kind of like a Justin Watson that we have there over with the Chiefs, that, maybe not a mainstay in this offense, but will get some of those deeper downfield shots. And if they are limiting Deebo in any form capacity, Jennings is that direct backup.
And Jules, when we're looking at the total, it's a full touchdown more than the Chiefs and Ravens. So this one's 51.5. Could you see a points explosion here between these two teams going down and brave enough to maybe take the over?
Yeah, I like the under in Baltimore more than the over in San Francisco, but I would lean to the over in this game. I do think we're going to see points specifically on San Francisco's side of things. You had them, playing close to as bad as they could play last week, and the rain was a huge issue for them offensively because that's a factor for Brock Purdy. It was clear if you watched that game. Not going to be a factor in these conditions today. You got Purdy going up against the 31st ranked pass defense in terms of yards per game. They are giving up, 300-yard passers 4 of the last 6 weeks. Stafford and Baker both over 300. Last I looked, Purdy was plus 175 to go for plus 300 in this game, something that I wrote up in my article on DK Network for this week. I think the Niners are in a good spot to score. I trust them. I have faith in them in this game. I would rather specifically target San Francisco on the team total only because of the issues we talked about yesterday, and we can get more into it today, that Detroit has outdoors. And it's not as much about the weather as it is simply getting out of the dome, going from turf to grass. That causes issues for the Lions, who score 30.7 points per game, 30.75 points per game in their 14 indoor games this season, 17.8 in their 5 outdoor games. 1 outdoor game in the last 12 weeks for Detroit.
Chicago.
Something new for them. It would not surprise me if they do struggle a little bit.
I mean, have we been able to dive into those 5 games more though? Because weren't they 3-2 straight up, 3-2 ATS in those? Because a lot of it has to do with the weather and how cold it's going to be. It's going to be perfect weather out there.
Yeah, part of it has to do with the weather. Part of it has to do with
just not a controlled environment
in the dome.
Yes.
And being on grass.
Yeah.
So even though it is not bad weather, not being in their dome at home has affected their offense. And yes, they've won some of those games, 21-20 in Kansas City. That was a win on opening night. But the numbers don't lie. The numbers are the numbers. Over 30 a game indoors, little over 17 per game outdoors. Those are.
I mean, not sleeping in your own bed sucks. Not sleeping in your bed
I can't get behind this.
I know. You sound like all the people on Twitter that said that's a dumb trend that are all going to be wrong today, and then I'm going to say, I told you.
And Josh, you're saying go out right now and grab 51.5 because this thing is moving up.
Yeah, I think so, Emerson. That's my player to go over in this one. Again, we've seen this line. At one point, it was as low as 50.5, got up to 51.5. A lot of shops are juiced up, like it may go to 52. Now, of course, you really would have wanted to target this 50.5 because it lands on 51, 27-24 score. You got to kind of think through your head what final scores could be. Key numbers obviously aren't as important when it comes to totals as it is when it comes to spreads. But the fact that this thing is rising, it lands 52. Again, you want to catch that bet, not push it. Totally get Julian's point in terms of going outdoors, but the conditions are great. I kind of lean on towards Steve a little bit here. I think this will be basically a good sign for Detroit that even though they're going outside, it's a grass field. It's going to be 70 degrees, no wind at all, no precipitation. And really, if you look at the bet percentages, guys, typically in these big games, championship games, Super Bowls, you look at basketball, March Madness, people want to bet the overs. They're getting together today. They want to have some fun. Order some food, have some drinks, go to the bar.
Whoa, big man. Are you planning our afternoon for us here?
So I think so. Maybe after the show, that's what we'll do. We'll go to eat, drink, and chill.
You do owe us donuts.
I do owe you guys. But go over, right? However, the public's not saying that. Only 57% of bets are going over. To me, this is an opportunity to go over without being worried that you're on too public of a side. 2 of the top 5 offenses in the NFL, both averaging nearly 30 points per game. Also, Lions 12-7 to the over on the year. And here's what I'm going to lean on, guys. I like combining data currently to the past. If you can kind of have both these aligned,
Here we go,
Steve, you're going to like this.
Here we go, he says.
Here's your system, Steve. AFC, NFC championship games since 2004. A 20-year sample. The over is 22-13, 63%. So we got beautiful weather. We got the line rising.
Yeah.
We got a historical system match. I'm rooting for points over 51.5.
Everyone at home snacking.
Yeah, snacking.
Having
Domino's,
some bevies. You had Domino's the other day.
I did. I used some of my points for free cheesy bread. It was great. This needs to be a paid
Not an ad,
though,
but could be. Your name here, Domino's.
Yep. Cough it up, Domino's. All right. Take the weather out of your head. This is what I'm trying to say.
I have. A long time ago.
Good. Remove it. Jared Goff in a dome. 104 rating, 69% completion, 7.9 yards per pass attempt, 23 TDs to 8 INTs. Jared Goff outdoors. Gets a little worse. 87.9 passer rating, 64.5 completion percentage, 7 yards per pass, 7 TDs to 4 INTs. Jared Goff on grass. This is a surface he struggles with. 82 rating, 63.6 completion, 6.5 yards per pass, 5 TDs to 4 picks. Not playing on turf in the dome and playing outdoors. I don't care if it's in Hawaii on grass. that has affected Jared Goff throughout his career.
So he's just not a big grass guy.
But it's his grass. He's from Southern
You catch on quick,
California.
Did you have a prop in this game? And it better not be anything related to Jared Goff on grass.
No, it's not, because I'm not going to sit here and talk about grass for like.
I will
5
say
minutes.
he brought some numbers to back it up, as did Josh
what's
over
the
here.
sample size on that?
His career. Is this sample size not big enough for you?
No, the breakdown of those games.
How about with Rams versus Lions?
What do you mean the breakdown of those games?
Like you said, like the
don't
break.
ask that.
I don't want to talk about this anymore. I'm done with this grass talk. I'm done with Taylor Swift. I'm done with Harbaugh.
Well, Eminem. There'll be a lot of Eminem talk today.
Yeah, that's still fresh. So I'm not.
All right,
sick of
Dave,
that
on
yet.
past Eddie. What do you got for a prop?
Anything personal against anyone, but I just hope Jared Goff has an awful game today.
Really?
Well, if not, he's going to be eating nothing but Domino's moving forward.
I don't know if I'll be able to.
Again,
I don't know if I'll be able to afford Domino's.
delicious,
The Niners don't
affordable
win
food.
today, but-
Emergency
Domino's.
pizza, just break the
Yeah,
glass,
but real quick
Yeah, I do
here,
have an emergency pizza in my account too. So.
that is
That'll be
clutch.
good.
They're always telling me I
Send
have
it
one
my
as
way.
well.
I do like the Kittle prop still. I mentioned this. I mean, I was wrong about this, and I was actually surprised. I said, hey, if you're going to be taking the Kittle prop, take this now because it's juice minus 130 to the over. Wake up this morning, it's gone down 2 yards, but we mentioned this is really because of Debo coming back. I still like this one here. He's been a big factor in these playoffs here. The longest reception, too, you can get it over under 24 yards. I think that's valuable as well.
All right, we've got more discussion about this game with Jeff Howe of The Athletic coming up. But right after this break, a historic win on the PGA Tour yesterday in sunny California, and the recent betting trend you need to know before filling out that Pebble Beach betting card.
Oh, let us know.
take a quick little break from the gridiron. Let's head to the track, and by track, I mean the links, baby. We're talking golf. Jeff Ulrich, one of our gorgeous golf gurus here at DraftKings. Dude, the Farmers, wow, it's a lot of Jeff. The Farmers wrapping up yesterday.
There I am.
There you are, big man, that big, beautiful face of yours. First time since World War II here, Jeff. A man playing under the French flag has laid claim to a trophy on the PGA Tour. Matthew Pavon emerging. That was an electric leaderboard coming down the stretch. I saw you even tweeting through it a little bit saying, wow, could this one individual have his John Rahm moment? Because we all know John Rahm's obsessed with 18 on this course. But listen, this dude was 125 to 1 to like 151 pre-tournament outright. And I saw our buddy Jason Sobel tweet this out. So he did become the 4th straight PGA Tour winner with triple-digit odds to start the season. What does that say about golf right now and the tour 1 month into the season?
So it says a couple different things. I mean, I think first of all, some of these long shot winners are a result of the PGA Tour's top players getting diluted a bit. When you take away Bryson, when you take away, obviously John Rahm now, and Cameron Smith, there's just room for other guys to come to pop up. I mean, you're left with a few less inconsistent players, more inconsistent players at the top. And I think that the other factor here is that, the PGA has created this sort of feeder system with the European Tour, the DP World Tour now. And some of these guys on the DP World Tour were really good, and they just didn't get a chance to play against PGA competition very much. Now they're going in to play against PGA competition that wasn't as good as it was in the past. And they're coming in and they're kind of just hitting their stride right off the top. A lot of these guys like Pavon, Nikolai Hogard, Alberg, they have been playing a lot of golf too, so they're in form. They barely took a break over Christmas. They're coming in, guns blazing, so to speak, and we saw that last week. I mean, Hogard and Pavon were at the top of the leaderboard. They didn't crumble despite not playing Torrey Pines much. That's the biggest story for me. The PGA Tour is changing a bit this year. I think we got to adapt pretty quick here. I'm not suggesting go out and bet everyone under 200 to 1 every week, but I mean, this will come to an end soon, probably when we hit Florida or even next week. But, I think you will see more names like Pavon potentially break through or be at the top of the leaderboards this year.
Yeah, I think it's great to see some of these young guys. And I say young guys, I mean, this was a 31-year-old rookie yesterday who won this tournament. Yeah. But, I do believe, sports leagues around the world excel best when, the best players are on the biggest stages. And we kind of have one of those this week, Jeff. So maybe this trend of these long shot guys ends up being snapped. But Pebble Beach, just 2 courses this year. This is going to be a different tournament than we've seen in a long, long time. So bye-bye Bill Murray and all these other celebrities here, because only 2 rounds with the amateurs. It's a signature event, so we're talking a limited field, no cut. How is this going to change your betting approach this week?
Yeah, so I think for betting, obviously it's still Pebble Beach, and the setup is going to be somewhat similar. I mean, it's still 2 rounds of amateurs, whatever, but this is the one event, I'm going to say, this is the one event I'm actually glad they changed, because this was a brutal event before. You get 3 rounds, pros would be out there for 6 hours for 3 days in a row. There was 150 people on the course, not even including amateurs. And it was just too much. And now that they've condensed it, I'm glad this is only 80 people. Let's get a little bit more featured of the golfers on the weekend. I think that's what we're going to get. So I still think course history is going to apply nicely at Pebble Beach. That's the one thing. This has been a huge course history event. You get guys coming in, obviously having just a ton of experience playing this tricky little course. Guys like Brandt Snedeker, Jimmy Walker have always done well here. Jason Day has cleaned up here, even though he's never won. Jordan Spieth. I still think that's going to apply, but I think that it won't apply necessarily to the degree that it did in that old format. So, new format, a little bit more condensed, more elite names here, obviously, as well. But I still think there's going to be some value in chasing that course history with guys down the board. Okay, so right now, no odds currently available on the DraftKings Sportsbook, but we're 4 tournaments into the season. Is there a dude who is more on your radar who you may have your eye on this week, though, in this limited no-cut field? Yeah, so I think 2 guys that I'm pretty impressed with to start. Justin Thomas definitely deserves a shout out.
Yeah.
Had a really nice start at the Amex. I know it's only been a couple of events for JT, but he looks back. He had a pretty solid fall Played in the Euro Tour a bit. And I think that coming up, this next stretch for Justin Thomas is going to be pretty important. It will not shock me if he wins pretty quick here. This is just a player who's basically a lock for a win or two every year. And then last year happened. Everyone kind of wrote him off. It was a bad dip, but he is just too good a player to stay down. And then Nikolai Hogard is the other one. We saw him last week. This is a guy coming in jet lagged, no prep, and just about won on the PGA Tour, an event like he basically had no experience playing. Hogard's really good, and he's a player you need to just keep on this year, in my opinion. I don't know if it's necessarily going to happen at Pebble. It wouldn't necessarily be the spot I'd predict for him, but coming down the road, when we hit Florida, some of these tougher courses, Nikolai Hogard to me is going to be a name you really want to keep just targeting in the betting odds as well. He is an absolute talent, and he's probably going to grab a win at some point on the PGA.
Yeah, and a big story in golf over the last few weeks has really been fashion, Jeff. This golf fashion has just been exploding left and right. And then I know, you're a big NHL guy as well, one of our NHL analysts, and fashion has been a topic of conversation this week after the Stadium Series sweaters were released here. So it's like the Flyers, Devils, Rangers, Islanders all going to be taking part in the NHL Stadium Series coming up next month, MetLife Stadium. February 17th, and then the following day on the 18th. Yay or nay on these? I kind of like these, except the Islanders one. I'm like, oh, geez, I don't know about that one, sweetie.
I don't know. What were they going here for? I don't really know what they were going for here. Like the 1980s kind of like retro jackets. Like everything's a little bit too big here. It seems like
the Rangers one looks great.
Massive.
I'm sorry, the Rangers one looks great.
I think the Rangers one is probably the best. You're right. I like the Rangers. Here's my problem with this. For the Islanders one is terrible. It looks like an Edmonton Oilers jersey, except it says Isles. So it's like, great. So you're the New York Oilers. But here's my problem with these. The hockey is such a good, historic, rich tradition of jerseys. You can go into any team's past and just find some nice color combos and just bring them up. Like the green sweaters for the Devils. The Rangers have some great old ones as well. The one with the old, Lady Liberty on it. And why are we creating these new ones that it looks like, you got a bunch of 16-year-olds together. Let's make the Devils thing as big as possible. Let's put NYR across. It just doesn't make sense to me when we have all this great, traditional jerseys. The NFL nailed it with their sort of throwback jerseys. Why does the NHL keep trying to redo this? I don't understand. They have more things to draw back from than ever. So now I don't like these really as a whole. I think the Rangers one sticks out. I agree. It's the best. The other ones are just kind of meh to me.
All right. Well, a couple weeks after the Stadium Series wraps up, we will hit the NHL trade deadline. Is there a team right now? Give me a team that needs to go absolutely all in.
The team that needs to go all in is the Edmonton Oilers because we're in Connor McDavid's prime here, Leon Draisaitl's prime. They should be going out and getting
story every year, Jeff. Same story every year with our boys.
And look, their goaltending's great now, but is it creating a sense of sort of the urgency still needs to be there with the Oilers for the goaltending situation, and if it's not, that's an issue. There's definitely other teams down the road, though, down here as well. I think that the Panthers could potentially look to add in a goalie or do something at the very least. They're in a good spot. I really like the way the Panthers have played this year. You look down, most of the elite teams do have elite goalies, which isn't that shocking. The Devils are a team that could potentially be looking for a goalie just to stabilize what they've been going through. They've had a lot of injuries this year. I think the LA Kings, Talbot's been okay, but they could certainly add a goalie as well. They've got a really good team. I like the way their forwards are set up, but man, their goaltending's been a little bit up and down lately. So yeah, Kings, Devils, and of course the Oilers. They just need some kind of stability back there. They need a 1A option in case Skinner, just doesn't work out in the playoffs again.
Also, shout out to our boys in Edmonton. 16 straight wins, dude. That is hot.
Almost. Look, we're a couple wins away here from the history books. This is something you need to watch. So, they can tie the most wins in a row with one more win.
Yep.
They can break the record with 2. So, we're in watch time here. This is pretty cool.
All right, so we got a minute to go in this segment here, Jeff. There are 2 games on tap on tonight's slate. You mentioned the Kings need to go all in. The Kings have been in a dismal 2-7-5 record since December 28th. They've fallen out of the Pacific's top 3 spots, so they're visiting the Blue Jackets at the Kraken. What do you got for a bet tonight?
I do like the Kings here. I think that this is just a spot where you look at LA, they're 14-6 straight up on the road this year. They've been pretty good in these spots. And like you said, I mean, they've been bad of late, but like they had a 3-1 lead, a couple games ago against, I think it was the Red Wings or against the Sabres, excuse me. They blew that, but they were out to the lead. They got blown out by the Avalanche. That's not that big a deal. And then they had like 40 shots against the Sharks. So they're just kind of going through these like mental lapses. I think they probably pull out of it today. Plus 100 to win in regulation. LA Kings. I think they get it done against the Blues. Blues played last night as well, so the Kings got a rest advantage. These are really good odds to take a shot with the Kings tonight.
All right, big man. Enjoy the day. Enjoy football. We're going to talk a lot more football next with Jeff Howe of The Athletic, and why today could mark the end of an era here for Andy Reid and maybe Bill Belichick sliding in after him. Oh. Biggest story of the day, folks. Not one, but two conference championship games around the NFL. So I'd like to bring in one of my good friends right now, Jeff Howe of The Athletic. Dude covers the entire NFL year around. Wow, look at you. You look so intelligent with glasses on.
Well, I mean, that was the ruse to start, and now I just, quite frankly, can't see anything.
Well, I'm happy you are here. I can see you. So can all the people at home watching us right now. This Ravens-Chiefs game today, Jeff, some potentially sloppy weather, but we had Nate Taylor on earlier. He says, it looks fine outside. He was in his hotel room sitting right next to a window. Could be good for their running attack here. Mark Andrews is back. Like, it does feel like everything's kind of coming up Ravens right now. And after many disappointing performances in the postseason, it kind of feels like it appears to be their time. Would you agree with that? Or you think we just can't ignore the Chiefs and their history here?
Well, let's start with the Ravens. I mean, everything this season, this has been their year. I mean, Lamar Jackson looks like he's going to be the MVP. You look at Mike McDonald is closing in on the potential to get a head coaching job after this season. There's been so much to like about what Baltimore can do. The number one defense. I had somebody last week tell me that if Mark Andrews is coming back, it's pretty much a wrap for the rest of the league. The rest of the Ravens are just so deep. So this is a team that they're so well coached. You know, it's one thing to have the talent all the way across the board, offensively and defensively, but the adjustments that they made throughout that game against the Texans, holding C.J. Stroud to 3 offensive points, leaving them with no answers on offense, and then, you know, defensively, or really being able to attack that Texans defense, kind of hammer out the flats when the blitzes were coming at basically an historic rate against Jackson. I love the way that they're coached, and I love the way that they execute. If Lamar Jackson is the best player on the field, the Ravens are going to win. Yeah, it does feel like the Chiefs won't go out easily, though, Jeff, because other than a few red zone snags here over the first couple games, you know, it does look like that they maybe have their groove back a little bit. Would you give the edge here, I guess, to that Baltimore defense? Like, have the Chiefs' offense shown you enough over these past 2 postseason games to stick with and be able to compete with that top defense? Well, I mean, when you've got Patrick Mahomes, you have enough to compete. It's just, how much help is he going to get from the guys around him? I mean, the amount of mistakes that they've made over the course of the season that have cost them games in crucial situations, you can't ignore that. And if the Chiefs weren't able to rally last week, McCole Hardman's fumble through the end zone was going to be the epitome of their season. I mean, just yet another opportunity that they squandered because a wide receiver let the rest of the team down. So how much help can they get? You know, the other part too is, like, everybody says that Mahomes doesn't have enough weapons around him. It's not that. It's just the amount of mistakes that those weapons have made. Yeah. Rashee Rice has been an incredibly consistent player. Isaiah Pacheco is emerging as one of the better running backs in the league. And then if Travis Kelce continues to wake up like he did last week with a couple touchdowns, you know, then all of a sudden you've got 3 quality guys that he can disperse the ball to. It's just, you know, are you going to stop with the drops? Are you going to stop with the ill-timed penalties? Are you going to stop fumbling the ball at awful situations? If Mahomes needs those guys to kind of pick everything up around him, he cannot do this by himself.
Yeah, and Travis Kelce, by the way, 7 catches. He needs 7 catches to pass Jerry Rice for the most in postseason history here. I got one more for you for this game before we get to the NFC side of things. Rumors are swirling. Andy Reid may potentially retire if this is his last game, or maybe they go out with a Super Bowl, and some rumblings that Bill Belichick, he's in the conversation to replace Andy Reid. You've been over and on top of this Bill Belichick story and him not landing a coaching job up to this point all season long here. What are you hearing, and the potential of Andy Reid stepping away and maybe Bill Belichick sliding in?
Well, I'd be surprised if Andy Reid wanted to step away after the season. I mean, it still seems like he's got a lot to give on the sideline. And I know he's been honest about the fact that he is getting closer to the end of his career. Maybe that only means another season or 2 or whatever he's able to give them. But, you know, the other part of that question, I understand why there'd be a connection from Belichick to go to the Chiefs in a ready-made roster and wanting somebody that can, you know, even if Belichick only has 2 more years and you know, the quality of that roster, the ability to coach up that defense and to keep them as legitimate Super Bowl contenders would be enticing. But if you're the Chiefs, I think you would want a little more consistency just with the carryover that you could have in a transition from Andy Reid whenever that happens. You have Steve Spagnuolo on staff, who's one of the better defensive coaches in the league, has head coaching experience. But then, even if they want to bring in somebody like Eric Bieniemy or Mike Kafka, somebody who has Chiefs ties and can kind of, again, keep that consistency in place beyond Andy Reid, I think that would make a little more sense than Bill Belichick at this point.
Guess a Bieniemy leaves a little bit and then kind of comes back, the return of the prodigal son. All right, Jeff, I'm picking up what you're putting down. One thing I'm very excited about today, and I think a lot of America is as well, is just this fairy tale. Everyone's rooting for the underdog out west with the Lions facing the 49ers. We've come a long way since the kneecap-biting introductory press conference here with Dan Campbell, man. Like, this team is fun as hell to watch, but are they a little too vulnerable on defense, you think, to compete with that juggernaut offense of San Francisco? One that's going to have Debo today?
Probably. And you know what's cool about the fairy tale aspect of it? They've rallied, or they've got America rallying around
baby.
them and all that stuff. But it's also, there are people in the league that are really captivated by this story. I mean, I do this picks story every week where I talk to a handful of people around the league from different teams and try to see what their feel is for who's going to win these games. And the people who picked against the Lions this week were like apologetic. They didn't want to pick against the Lions. But you look at everything on paper and like you said, that vulnerable defense, the other part, on paper, it makes all the sense in the world for the 49ers to win this game. I would expect the 49ers to win this game, but I do think there is a path for Detroit to pull off the upset. Let's start with that defense. Brock Purdy didn't look good last week against the Packers. And it's not like the Packers had this like resurgent defense or whatever. They fired their defensive coordinator like 4 days after that game. So that Brock Purdy looked fairly pedestrian at best before that game-winning drive when he was tremendous. But Brock Purdy did not look that good against a vulnerable defense. So he could make some mistakes again in this one. The other part of that is the Lions running game, that two-headed monster. They're consistent. They stay, it's one thing to go into a game and say, we're going to run the ball, we're going to control the clock and all that other stuff. A lot of coaches get impatient and they're like, they get about 10 plays into the game and they say, screw that, we're going to start throwing. This is more fun. The Lions have shown a dedication to keeping the ball on the ground. And the 49ers, the total numbers against the rush are good, but that's because teams don't really run against them because they fall behind so quickly. The yards per carry is pedestrian. So if the Lions are able to jump out to an early lead, even if it's, 7-3 or something, it doesn't have to be a big early lead, but if you can kind of take the multi-dimensional aspect away from the 49ers offense, or you start to force Purdy to throw the ball over the middle of the field, that's when he's made some mistakes.
Yeah, Detroit, the only team in the league, Jeff, with two players who scored at least 10 rushing touchdowns. So we're talking David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs here. In terms of the 49ers, on their side of things, Kyle Shanahan, how bad does he need this win and maybe even another Super Bowl appearance just for his legacy here? Because last week was the first time. So now he's 1-30 in games where his team can actually win a game when they're trailing by 5 points or more entering the fourth quarter here. So there's some people who I think are a little nervous for the 49ers if this thing is close. But does he need this for his legacy?
Well, if they continue to win, once he wins a Super Bowl, I think you're going to start to enter the conversation as like one of the better coaches of all time. And that's, you're laying the groundwork. It's not like he's going to retire and everybody's going to just start building statues in Canton for him. But it's a necessary step in order to cement himself with that type of reputation. I thought for the past 3-4 years, I know the success of the 49ers since his arrival predates that, but I really thought the last 3 or 4 years, Kyle Shanahan has been one of the probably 3 or 4 best coaches in the league at worst. And, some last season in particular, I thought he was the best coach in the league. So this is a guy who has the potential to cement himself as an historic level if he continues this trajectory. But you got to get that first Super Bowl first.
Yeah.
And you certainly don't want to give away a game when you're the 1 seed at home in the playoffs with all these expectations, with how strong you've been. You don't want to lose in upset fashion. But it's not like this game is going to do a lot for the resume or the reputation or what have you if they don't go and get it done again in 2 weeks.
And he's going to have revenge on the mind if he ends up facing the Chiefs here in a couple weeks in Vegas, which right now, Jeff, we got a minute to go in this segment. Which two teams will be meeting in Vegas in 2 weeks?
I'm going chalk. I'm sticking with the Ravens and the 49ers. I just think they've been, by and large, the better teams over the course of the season. Both have a lot going for them. I absolutely see a path where, I mean, the Chiefs or the Lions could win. And I'm not trying to sit on the fence, but, you know, this is not like a wrap or anything by any stretch of the imagination. Like I said, if the Lions are able to run the ball and force Purdy into turnovers, that's an easy way for them to kind of keep this momentum going, keep the pressure on, like you said, Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy in the fourth quarter, where they have not been tremendous. The other side of that, again, if Lamar Jackson's the best player on the field, the Ravens are going to win hands down. If he starts making mistakes, which have been a reason for some of their playoff losses under his tenure, then the Chiefs absolutely have a chance to.
Jeff Howell of The Athletic, you are good people. Thanks, homie. We're wrapping up the show next with Best Bets, people. Final block of the sweat, ladies and gentlemen. Then you'll have just about, 5 hours or so until kickoff of the AFC title game around 3 o'clock Eastern time. We've had some pretty good guests to give us some pretty good intel today. Anything stand out to you? And Jules, I'll start with you because you were part of the Nate Taylor interview there.
I was.
Anything that he said that you're thinking a little bit more about that may impact the way you're going to navigate kind of betting this game?
I'll say weather not going to impact anything that I do today in either game. If you like the under in Baltimore, it's because you like the under in Baltimore. Those two teams getting together on this stage, what they can do on defense. And same with I'm sticking to it. Jared Goff's going to have a bad game on grass. Again, nothing to do with weather. It's just being out of the dome, playing on that surface. So I guess Steve will like my take of weather does not matter today.
Yeah, Steve, congratulations. You brought him to the dark side.
I agree wholeheartedly. Like, the under is not, you're not taking it because, it's 10-mile-per-hour winds or it's going to drizzle. How about there's just two defenses playing against each other in a playoff game? That might make a little more sense.
I agree. But, for real, it was nice having Nate literally sitting next to the window and be like, dude, the weather today is going to be fun.
You could have asked some better questions, but I think it was good. Yeah,
is that right? Okay. Maybe I'll put the read receipts here of all the texts you were sending me throughout that interview. Well, it was nice having you work at DraftKings, Steve. And don't forget, I'm tight with the folks in HR. Anything for you, Josh, stand out? And even with what Jeff was saying about maybe the legacy of Kyle Shanahan here and how he hasn't fared so well as the game has become tighter, the later it gets.
Yeah, so I think my big takeaway, Emerson and Jeff Howe hit on this, it's the head versus heart when it comes to the Lions and 49ers game. Because the heart, again, we're humans, we have emotions, we try to use our head over our heart. I think if you're a sports bettor, you always want to use your head over your heart. But again, Jeff kind of pointed out the fact that he runs that article and he gets intel from different executives, and they're all saying, man, we don't want to bet against the Lions because of the story, because of the Cinderella aspect, because this is a team that's been so bad for so long. We've seen the two home games. People are going nuts. M&M's in the stands. This is really captivating the country.
Is this your way of saying to ignore Narrative Street?
It's a little bit.
Well,
so
it's Narrative Avenue and then Street Road.
What a final block for Steve.
Along those lines,
everything's coming up, Steve.
Everything's coming up, Steve.
Yeah, this is your day, big man. Head versus heart, just in terms of the betting market, too. 70% of bets are going Lions and the points. Makes total sense when you think about it from the eye test. And, it's a high-powered offense. They'll keep it close. But again, the market is telling you there is liability here on San Francisco. Just the fact that they're super contrarian, only getting 31% of bets, but half the money. And this line never got down to 6.5. It's peaked up at different times to 7.5. So that's going to be fascinating to me. And then one guy in particular, guys, to look at would be Jahmyr Gibbs. I just want to throw this in there before we get out of here. Jahmyr Gibbs over 23.5 receiving yards. It opened the week at 21.5. It's been bet up to 23.5. It's juiced up 23.5 over -120. It may go to 24. I think you're going to need a big game out of Jahmyr Gibbs to keep up with this offense, especially if what Jeff said, the bad defense of the Lions, you're giving up points. Well, you got to start scoring points. He's gone over this number in both postseason games. He had 40 receiving yards versus Tampa, 43 versus the Rams. I'm going over for the game, 51.5.
Okay.
My heart's rooting for the Lions. My head's telling me San Fran is sharp.
Yeah.
So I'm giving you the cop-out. I'm only betting the total. I'm going Gibbs over.
That's typical Josh Applebaum tradition there is the cop-out. So is that right now your best conference championship Sunday bet?
I'm going 4.5 with Mahomes here. Yeah. I'll go down with the ship if Mahomes doesn't play well. If the Ravens roll, I'll say I maybe put too much into the stock of that underdog situation, 9-1 ATS. But again, this is something we've seen in the Super Bowl against the Eagles. We saw it against Buffalo. I know the Ravens are a different animal here, but I think you're taking a position on, you're not betting KC today because they're sharp. You're betting on KC because the numbers moved a lot. There's value to buying low on Mahomes, and they've been in the situation before. Baltimore hasn't. So 4.5, and again, I would love to see this close at 4 and for those 4.5s be gone.
Yeah.
That would be a good sign for KC.
And so before we get into some Super Bowl futures and some look-aheads, just right now for today, the bet you're most confident in, you would call it your best bet, Steve.
Taking the Ravens. I'm taking the Ravens at -4. I really do think that there is so many ways that the Ravens can beat the Chiefs. I do not feel the same about how the Chiefs can beat the Ravens in this game here. Defensively, offensively, they just have it ready, and they're ready to go in this game here against the Chiefs. Like I mentioned here, the Ravens allowing just 16 points per game to their opponents all throughout the season here. Rice in a very tough matchup in coverage against Kyle Hamilton. Really, it's going to come down to, and this is another bet that I like too a lot, is Justin Watson Watson to go over 16.5 receiving yards. You're going to have Rice on lockdown coverage. You're going to have MVS on lockdown coverage with Marlon Humphrey. That might open up a lot for Justin Watson and Travis Kelce, but Watson really has that low yardage total. But if you look at Watson's total of 16.5, his average distance of target on the year sits at just over 19. So we're talking about he gets that one target of downfield, makes that catch. He's going over that yard total in one shot there. So I think this is going to open up a lot more for Watson and Kelce. But at the end of the day, I think the Ravens have the better team. Overall, give me the Ravens -4.
And his girlfriend will be there. Jules,
Can't wait.
best bet. Everything was looking up for you until a second ago.
I'll preface this by saying hopefully you are a regular on the show and got the 49ers futures. I'm not laying 7 with the Niners today because I don't have to. I am loaded up on Niners to win the NFC. Best bet today, if you're neutral, you haven't done anything yet, Niners, -7. It's -115 right now. One of the better prices that you've seen throughout the week. I'm comfortable laying 7 with the Niners. I think that they are going to stomp the Lions here. Everyone's emotional pick today, the dog everybody loves. Jared Goff's not going to play well on grass. This is a reputation. This is a reputation.
Going out on a limb here,
We started so strong for you.
Jared Goff. This is a legacy game for me with Jared Goff going out on the grass and needing to look bad.
I want him to play.
I don't have
so
time.
bad.
I don't have time to get to San Francisco. Otherwise, I would get out there and slick the field or something so I could make myself look better. But Niners -7. They're going to be all over the Lions. Brock Purdy is going to look like everybody remembers Brock Purdy not being able to throw the ball in his one playoff game this year. He's going to look like a totally different quarterback in this game.
Okay. All right. Super Bowl futures right now. Does anybody have anything?
I will say, if you do like the Chiefs, 4-1 to win the Super Bowl is
So-
not getting that type of number, on a normal basis.
Odds on the
like
DK
the
Sportsbook
AFC.
right now, folks. 49ers +145, Ravens +180, Chiefs +400, and the Lions +800.
I'll say this. I like the AFC in the Super Bowl. If you go back and look at matchups throughout the season, the AFC has consistently pounded these NFC teams, obviously highlighted by the Ravens, who went to San Francisco, destroyed the 49ers, 44-6 against the Lions. But even just look throughout the course of the year. Dallas loses to Miami. You go through games, other than Detroit taking down Kansas City on opening night, a lot of the big conference head-to-heads, the AFC won. That might be telling us something here. So yes, I agree with Steve. If you like Kansas City today, maybe you get a little 4-1 on them.
Yeah.
I'm going to like the AFC side. Most likely, things can change. It's 2 weeks away. I'm going to most likely like the AFC side in the Super Bowl.
Are systems telling you anything when we're looking ahead right now before these conference championship games kick off in terms of Super Bowl futures?
So futures, to me, I'll throw this at you guys. During the break, we had a very loyal listener and watcher of the show who DM'd me and said, I have a big futures bet on the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. Now, he stands to win. I'm not going to give you the exact number, but a very substantial amount that could buy a lot of Domino's pizzas. Let's just say that. Maybe a lifetime of
Jules.
pizzas.
Wow, you peasant.
So without knowing the actual number here, guys, I'll pitch it to you. If you're holding a big ticket, and this is just a philosophical argument, in terms of how much you bet, how much you stand to win, how risk averse you are as a bettor. The joke here that someone told me a long time ago is hedging is for landscapers. You ever heard that phrase before?
Yeah,
Or gardeners.
yeah.
There's
Or
ego
manscapers.
involved. I don't want to, I believe my bet. I want to stick with my bet. I remember the Bruins played the Blues in the Stanley Cup final a few years ago, and somebody had a huge ticket on the Blues. He never hedged the whole time. He won a huge bet because the Blues won it all. So I'll throw this to
that
you
game
guys.
7. That was,
remember
that was
I don't
a
even,
TD
as a
Garden
Bruins
because they
fan,
bullied the hell out of the
terrible. Tuca
black
me
and
down
gold.
on that one.
Yep. Okay.
But what would you guys do, long story short? If you are standing to win a very large amount on a Ravens Super Bowl future, do you just ride that out, or do you hedge with KC to win the game? Do you bet KC to win the Super Bowl? Personal
ride it
preference if you were in that situation.
And I think it's very important, too, because we were discussing this a little bit off air, too. There is no solid answer. There is no right answer.
Correct.
There is no wrong answer. This is such a personal thing that you should decide on your own. If you are in this position where, if this is me and I have that Ravens bet, I'm letting it ride out because I do feel very confident about the Ravens. But I want to make it perfectly clear. If you were in that type of situation, there is no right or wrong answer. Sure, hindsight's 20/20 when the games play out. Oh, I should have done this. I should have done this. Well, of course, if you had that type of insight, you would have done something. But if you felt strong about that before, and you're in this type of position where the Niners and Ravens, when it comes to odds, are the two favorites. They're separated by 35 cents here. Then there's a big jump from that. I'm feeling good about my Ravens, future at this point. But it is very important to you how you feel about that to make that decision yourself.
hedging is all personal preference. That's what I tell people all the time. What does that dollar amount mean to you? Are you comfortable getting nothing out of this? Do you need something out of this? And think about how you would feel with each outcome, like before the game. Like I know, I have a Ravens feature. I love the Ravens today. Well, think about how you're going to feel if the Chiefs win. Do you want to get a unit or two out of this? Or are you good? Hey, I got 1 unit on the future. Let's just push it all out and let it ride.
And there's also the hot conspiracy theory about the Super Bowl logo and the colors 2 years ago. Super Bowl 56, the logo had yellow for the Rams.
We can skip
Then there was the orange, there was the
30
Bengals.
seconds left in the show.
Last year
It's
was
over.
green
We're not
and
talking
red.
colors.
This year, purple and red. Does that represent the Ravens and 49ers?
Stupid. These narratives. Just wrap up the show.
Have a great conference championship Sunday.
Take it off my
everybody.
microphone on air. Okay.